Okay, a quick tutorial on how to make a leather-bound book like this one. Here's a few glamour shots using just a paperback. To turn a paperback book into a leather-bound book, the first thing you need to do is tear off the paper covers. You can see how I'm kind of doing this carefully. You may have some pages that look like they're about to fall off, but we'll fix that. Next, you take some end papers, which is just paper you like. You can get 12 by 12 sheets pretty easily. If you need bigger, there's a way to glue those together that I'll put in the Instructables instructions. Then you're going to glue a little strip. PVA glue is what I use. It's the same stuff as Elmer's glue. This is just a variety that has no acid in it, so the book will last longer. I'm not sure that there's any problems with using Elmer's glue if you don't care about your book lasting more than 50 years. But so you're going to glue your end papers on, and then the easiest way to trim them to size is just to glue them on too big and then cut the edges off afterwards. I'm using an X-Acto knife here with a long flexible blade, but you could use whatever. Doing the same thing with the end papers on the back of the book now. So just a little bit of PVA glue. You want a real thin strip, like 1/4 inch, 1/8 of an inch even. And you're going to glue that on the spine side of your text block. Trim the excess. And these end papers you're making flush to the pages, no overlap. And you can see here that page that came off, I'm just putting a real thin strip, like an 1/8 of an inch or even a 1/16 of an inch of glue. Actually, perfect bound books, they typically don't go on the inside of the pages like I did here. They'll just kind of fan the pages out and put a bunch of glue on the spine, which I'm about to do in addition to hold everything together. This is a little piece of fabric. You don't want something too stretchy, but otherwise any fabric will do, and I'm making what's called a super. So this just kind of reinforces the perfect bound. Perfect bound is glue only, and that works on paperback books just fine, but adding this super makes me feel a little better. I'm not sure that I've ever experimented with not doing it, but probably optional, but pretty easy to do too. So you just take some fabric, glue it on, then stretch it real tight over both sides. That kind of gives you a little bit of reinforcement to hold everything together. So that's on. These are called headbands. So if you search for headbands, you can find them. They're really cheap. You can also make your own with yarn and fabric, but that's just the top part of the book that you normally see when you look in a hardbound book, and doesn't really have any function as far as I can tell other than looking cool. They may have used it for reinforcement in the past, but it's mostly decorative now. So you can put those headbands on, let things dry a little bit, and then you want to decide how big your piece of leather is going to be. So here I'm measuring the text block, getting the height, the depth, and the width, and then here's the equation for how to calculate your leather size. So 2 widths and a depth plus 3/4 of an inch, and a height plus 1/4 of an inch is what I use. That gives you a little overhang on all the edges and enough to bend over the spine. So here I've marked it out on my leather. I kind of check with the text block one more time. And you can just cut things out with scissors. As far as leather here, you want to use something pretty thin. So this is vegetable tan leather that's about a 1/16 of an inch thick. And now I'm wetting the front to tool the leather. So if you're tooling the leather, you want to do what's called casing the leather. So you get it pretty wet with a sponge and you wait till it looks almost dry. And I'm going to do a combination of tooling with some 3D printed features that I made. So you can download a logo and make an SVG out of it, load that into a CAD program and extrude it, and make your own little 3D printed tools for tooling the leather, which is what I did here for the text, because I can get a lot better, neater letters doing that. And then I'll show a little bit of hand tooling in a second after I've got these logos attached. So I did the title with an underline at the top of the series. This is the Bartimaeus series, which is a great one. My sister-in-law really likes, so I'm making this as a Christmas gift for her. And then I cut off the underline for that Bartimaeus title to make something for the spine. You can see I marked the centers. If you're going to do something on the spine, you want to make sure you've got it centered really well. So I put a lot of effort here into trying to measure it. find the exact center, check everything. I actually decided to trim a little bit off of the text block for the way it laid around. Remember, I added 3/4 of an inch. Then I just cut off a little bit until it, looked right when it wrapped around the actual text block. So now I'm clamping on that piece for the spine. If you do this 3D printed method, you usually have to clamp things rather than hammering them because you got a big area. And then I've been leaving it for about 5 minutes, which seems to work really well. So now I've got a nice mark on the spine, some titles, and then I wanted to hand tool the amulet. This is the amulet of Samarkand. So I kind of sketched it based on what I saw in the cover of the book, and with that sketch now I'm tracing, and this is using a modeling tool to trace. So with the leather damp again, cased like you're going to tool it, you can hold your paper and trace with the modeling tool, and it'll just leave a little indentation on all those lines. Now I'm going to come in with a knife and kind of scribe all those lines. It's called a swivel knife. So I'm just taking all the big lines and cutting maybe 1/3 of the way through the leather so that I can start tooling. This isn't really a tooling tutorial. There's much better ones of those, but you can kind of see what the process looks like. These are called bevelers. So these kind of cut or stamp a wedge on one side of each line to give you sort of a 3D look. So my process is usually just to make a pretty basic design, bevel one side of all the cuts. You can see that makes it look a lot more 3D. Put a few little dots there, and then I'm using what's called a background tool to fill in the background. It just kind of makes it look textured and a little darker than the rest of the stuff so that things stand out even more. So that's the background, and at the end you can come back with the swivel knife and add a few little decorative cuts, and now you've got a pretty nice hand-tooled design with some 3D print tooled text. Just cut off the edges. This is using what's called an edge beveler to just kind of cut off the sharp edges of the leather. And now I'm going to start finishing. So this is tan coat. It's kind of a protective clear layer. So I put that on. It makes the leather a little bit darker. There's some good tutorials on different ways to finish, and I'm always experimenting. I actually wish I had just left this one with the tan coat. It looked pretty nice. But if you put tan coat on first and then come back with an antiquing gel like this, if you get the ratios right, a lot of times you can make the main part of the leather stay really light and the tooled part get much darker. I ended up putting on a little bit too much tan coat. I think I did 2 or 3 layers of it, and so it was hard to get the antiquing gel to soak in even on the tooled parts. And then by the time I did, it ended up making the whole leather a little bit dark, so it ended up a little bit muddier than I would have liked, but this is always something you can play with. Doesn't look bad for sure. So now we're going to glue the covers on. So the key here is to not glue within about 3/8 of an inch of the spine side of the text block. So you saw me making marks there, and on the leather and the text block. This leather is going to overhang a little bit, so I'm not going to the edge. And then I'm putting a piece of sacrificial paper in there to make sure I do get all the way to the edge on the text block. Then I'm lining things up and gluing. And again, I've glued the whole front of the text block and the whole back except for about 3/8 of an inch by the spine. You can see that blank spot I'm leaving. So you don't want to glue too close to the spine or the book will start tearing itself apart when you open and close it. Leaving that little bit of relief helps. Put some fresh paper in there to protect in case any glue weeps out. It doesn't get onto the pages while it's drying. You can leave it. Some people will leave it for 2 days. I actually, after a couple hours, just took this apart to look at it, kind of make sure everything was okay. And it was. That PVA glue dries pretty quickly. So there you've got your book. So there you have it. Turned out pretty good. I hope you'll check out my website, my newest book, Soulwinder, which mixes the broken meritocracy of Red Rising with the hard magic and moral questions of the Black Prism. Thanks for watching.